We're back out on the water again. Considering my shop situation, I don't really have a place to shoot videos anymore in the shop. It's kind of been taken over by bait storage, bait packaging storage. So my only option really is to get out on the water, take an hour to wrap out in a video, which can be like a little frustrating sometimes because you got to deal with the wind, and it's always windy in the afternoon, and I'm not an early riser, so I'm not getting out here first thing in the morning when it's nice and calm. And then you don't want to be that weirdo that's over tucked in the corner of the lake talking to yourself on a video, or at least I don't. I'm like self-conscious about that. So anyways, I'm here, and I just wanted to do a follow-up to the double-digit twice caught video. To me, that is super cool. Being able to identify a fish and pattern it, its growth, size, location at different times a year is, it's just super cool. And nonetheless, that it's a double digit that you've shared that moment twice with that fish now. Maybe that fish got your number, I don't know. But to me, I think that is super cool. And personally, it's insanely valuable information. It's all kind of anecdotal, but I do think there's a lot of value from firsthand accounts from other anglers on the water, or myself included. That particular fish was caught in 2018 and then again in 2019, talking about the double-digit twice caught fish. 14 months had spanned since the first time I caught her to the second time I caught her. She had only grown maybe a quarter or half an inch, I got to look close, and then gained half a pound. So in 14 months, that's all she grew. I'm just taking a guess here, but I will assume that that fish is not going to get much bigger. She's at the upper end of her size. She's still a great fish, but I don't think she's going to get much bigger. She might fill out a little bit more, but outside of that, at a 14-month window, no extra growth, kind of is what it is. Another example, fish that I haven't shown video of or anything, I caught a fish in 2019 that was 25.5 inches, somewhere in there. Off the top of my head, I don't know the exact size. And then I believe she was like 11, high 11. I caught her again this year, 2021. So 2 years later, now she's a teen fish and she's grown about an inch, but she's packed on almost 2 pounds. So that fish may continue to go. Keeping track of that is pretty damn cool, and understanding the path you keep crossing with these fish and trying to dissect that a little bit. Does my fishing style match really well with these particular fish feeding behavior? Maybe. That's a cool way to think about it, and almost a positive way to think about it. But what I often get sucked into when I start analyzing these fish being caught over and over again, there's not a lot of double digits to go around. I'm not just catching them in the boat every single day. I work hard for those fish. And then to realize that I'm catching some of the same fish over and over and over, I start to slide down that dark hole of, man, this is not a big bass factory. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of anglers make. They assume that there's hundreds of these double digits swimming around in these small impoundments that we have here in Southern California. I just don't think there are. Going back to the feeding patterns, which kind of makes me eliminate this, is that fish that I got when she was an 11, I caught her in a completely different area when she's a 13. And no, totally different style of fishing, but yet I'm catching the same fish. So I don't think that I'm just in tune with these particular fish. I think those big bass, there's not a lot of them, and they move to key points of the lake, and those are the fish that you keep crossing paths with, and occasionally you pluck one off. Sure, I'm not thinking that there's only 10 double digits in a lake, but it goes to something that I've always said. I think there's X amount that are actually catchable, and then there's some giant fish that just will never be caught, or rarely caught. They just don't fall in tune with the way we're fishing for them. So if somebody's really thinking outside the box, they might be able to do some true damage and catch a lot of giant fish. I'm sure that there's probably like some surveys, some biological studies that some guys have done, but for the most part, what I gather, it's just us anglers sharing stories, sharing pictures, and going, dude, I caught that same fish. Now, something I'm going to start doing to be better on it is start taking photos and measurements of those fish that aren't in the double-digit class, putting them on the board, taking a nice clean photo, so that maybe I can get out ahead on this and start noticing growth patterns of fish that are like that 6-pound range and up. Maybe you can follow along with this fish's journey as it grows inside. Now, there's a lot more 6 and 7-pound fish, but you can still weed through them by cataloging. Okay, this is this, and this. Here's a double digit. If you end up getting a giant fish, kind of look back. Some of those bigger fish are very distinguished, and when you're holding them, you just go, this is really familiar. It's oddly familiar, and that's what kind of triggers that. Hold on, let me go through my photos real quick and pair them up. Yep, sure enough, there she is. I caught her 2 years ago, or a year ago. It's mind-blowing, but at the same time, it's really not. When you take a step back and understand how few giant bass there are in these small bodies of lakes. That's what I think. I don't think there's tons swimming around. You have a lot of competition, especially in a lake that I'm fishing. It's got striper, gizzards, go down the list. It's got a lot of competition, so the ability for those bass to grow to truly monster size and plenty of the bass to do that, I think is really limited. Now, when we expand into some of those bigger lakes, like say in California, the mother lode lakes, or out in Texas, out east, where you get into some monster sized lakes, then you really have the ability to start unlocking massive amounts of giant fish. Now, per acre, I still don't think that there's a lot of fish, but you have a lot more water that you can run to come in contact with more double-digit trophy caliber fish. I mean, putting it in perspective, like a lot of the lakes that we fish in here in Southern California, the main lake is pretty much just like a large cove in some of those other large bodies of water, which could be looked at as a positive thing, I guess. If you're fishing some of those larger bodies of water, go, well, dude, say there's 50 double digits in this entire lake. That means there's potentially 50 double digits in just one big cove of some of these monster-sized lakes. You really have an opportunity to kind of do some damage on some of those big fish if you can dial them in. There's other really cool ways that the documentation works out great too, is just in photos. My 17-pounder, she was caught 2 years later, well past post-spawn, at 13 something. She caught in a different part of the lake, actually not but like 100 yards from where I released her 2 years prior, but she was caught in the summertime, and she was 13 something pounds. That fish was then released in another location and was caught again 2 weeks later, again 13 pounds. So what took place in that window of her losing 4 pounds was, one, it was post spawn, two, that was the second year of no trout. They had stopped stocking the trout, so she no longer had that basketball sized belly. She just went back to a normal main lake feeding fish, just trying to survive, getting desperate, and probably towards the end of her life cycle. I don't know that for sure, but just talking to some dudes that do work in that field, they're going to get into that early teen range, and those large fish maybe even get up to 18 years old. But once they're in their teens, they're kind of at their max size, and they're not going to get that much bigger. Knowing that we can catch those same fish time and time again, when you're swim bait fishing or trophy bass fishing, if you know those specific areas that giant fish are going to hang out, you can target them. The disappointing thing is if you start to realize you're catching the same fish over and over. It's super cool, but in a trophy hunting perspective, you start to understand your body of water a little bit and go, man, maybe I'm already kind of in the top tier for the size of the fish I'm going to be able to catch out of this body of water. If they're not growing much after a certain point, maybe I got to find greener pasture somewhere else. Circling all the way back, it's amazing how much certain little tools can help in the overall pursuit. You know, I take it for granted with the measuring boards. I just kind of do it now all the time with any fish of size, of quality. But you forget how those tools that people don't necessarily think, oh, I don't need to be measuring my fish or any of that. Those are all tools to help you analyze your own collected data. And catching big fish time and time again, same angler catching them multiple times, people have done it. They've done it a lot. Don't think most guys are documenting it well enough so you can clearly see and use their scale pattern like a fingerprint. You get it all lined up. It's a telltale mark if it's the same fish or not. It's just so damn cool. I don't want to keep going on about it anymore. I think most of you guys will understand. You let me know. Throw it down there in the comments. If you haven't and you like the videos, subscribe. If you want notifications, click that little bell. And as always, we really appreciate the support. If you like, you share the video, head on over to our website. You know the deal. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.